in preparation for today's hearing. Aaron Beck from the mayor's team, Scott Belcastro representing Trey Bell LLC, and Frank Wilson from AEP Energy. Thank you for being here tonight. I also want to thank my colleague, Councilmember Remy, Chair of the Environment Committee. Him and I have been working on this initiative for feels like almost a year now. So it's nice to have you back and helping to joint chair this meeting here tonight. So they want to thank the members of the public for taking time to tune in tonight virtually to learn more about the operation of the governance plan following the overwhelming passage of Issue 1 in this year's general election. This is the first of two hearings, both required by the Public Utilities Commission of Ohio, before next steps in the city aggregation process can be taken. The purpose of this hearing is to learn about the next steps to implement community choice aggregation here in Columbus and review and comment on that plan moving forward. This hearing is available to live stream on CTV, the City Council's Facebook and YouTube pages, while also being broadcast on Spectrum Channel 1024, WOW Channel 3, and AT&T UVerse Channel 99. The video will also be posted on the City of Columbus YouTube channel following the event. The primary goal of the city's electric aggregation program will be to provide competitive retail and energy supply costs for Columbus citizens, support renewable energy development, especially local renewable energy and generation to advance Columbus' sustainable economy, and to ensure that suppliers provide quality, reliable service to our customers here in Columbus. The city is also committed to an aggregation program that supports sustainability efforts, energy efficiency, and other priorities of the city that have been identified by our partners in the environmental community and others. Ordinance 1642-2020 passed earlier this year, which authorized the City of Columbus to perform all necessary actions to effect a governmental electricity aggregation program for the city with opt-out provisions pursuant to 4928.20 of the Ohio Revised Code for the residents and small businesses incorporated within the City of Columbus. The city added this program to the ballot on November 3rd, 2020, and I'm excited that it was approved by a vast majority of electors as required by state law. We're looking to gather feedback tonight here from members of the public and on Thursday. I know this evening we don't have any public speakers, which we'll get to later this evening, but I know the hearing on Thursday, we're going to spend some additional time providing the ability for the public to ask questions, both the AEP and Trey Bell and the City of Columbus, to make sure that we're providing as much transparency about as we can as we move into this next phase of the aggregation program. Looking forward to chatting with everyone tonight, but with that, I'd love to turn over to my colleague, Councilmember Remy, Chair of the Environment Committee, and my friend who's been working, as I said, on this project with me for the past year. Councilmember Remy?
Thank you so much, Councilmember Dorans. It's a pleasure to be here this evening, and certainly to have the opportunity to learn more about this aggregation program as we move forward after a decisive win on the ballot. I'd like to take a moment to thank the members of the sustainability team, Aaron Beck and her entire team, as we've been working towards this culmination of the aggregation program. Certainly want to thank the vendors here tonight and our partners who will be talking a little bit more about the program in general, and look forward to the opportunity to learn more myself as we get past the idea of it and more towards the implementation of it. So thank you, Councilmember Dorans, for the work that you've put into it. It's been a pleasure to partner with you, and I'll turn it back over to you to get moving through the meeting.
Thank you, Chair Remy. And I think you made an important point about, we've had a lot of these discussions about sort of the big ideas of aggregation and what it could mean for the city and sort of the potential that exists. And I think we're all very excited to start to dig into some of the details of what the program can and will do for residents here in Columbus. I also want to recognize Councilmember Shayla Favor, who's just joined us. And Councilmember Favor, do you want to make any opening remarks? Seeing vigorous head shaking, I will take that as no, but appreciate you joining tonight. especially with your work on housing and other issues around the city that certainly interplay with people's ability to pay for their energy costs. So thank you for being here tonight and lending your time to this important topic. So appreciate both Chair Remy and Councilmember Favor being here. With that, I'd love to turn the mic over to Aaron Beck, the Director of Special Projects in the Office of the Mayor, to make a presentation to Council. Ms. Beck?
Great, thank you so much, Council members. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. We do have a PowerPoint presentation to go along with. Okay. Great. Can folks see that okay? Okay. I see head nodding. Great. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you again, Councilmember Dorans and Councilmember Remy, for hosting today's hearing and for this opportunity to be here with you and with members of the public to discuss the next steps and processes for the city in establishing a clean energy aggregation program. Again, my name is Aaron Beck. I am with the policy team in Mayor Ginther's office, and I'm our Sustainable Columbus liaison, and so have the privilege and honor to work with our team on this great effort. So while we certainly have had several public hearings and some advisory group meetings on this topic that are available to the public, for anyone new who might be tuning in, aggregation really is the process through which the city can pool its residents together and contract for energy on their behalf. And so the city committed at the beginning of this year to implementing an aggregation program by 2022 that is powered 100% by clean, renewable energy, really a driving factor in the city's decision to pursue aggregation. And so one of the first critical steps in pursuing an opt-out aggregation program was placing this issue on the November ballot for voter approval, which I know Councilmember Dorans spoke to. And just like he shared, happy to share that on November 3rd, residents in Columbus overwhelmingly approved of the issue, really giving the city the ability to move forward with implementation and making it clear that pursuing clean energy and all of the benefits that it can bring really matters to the residents of Columbus. So that's really what's bringing us here today, are those next steps in the process for the city to implement a clean energy aggregation program. Now that we have that voter approval and voter approval has been achieved, the city next has to apply to the Public Utilities Commission of Ohio to become a certified government aggregator. And as part of that filing and application process, the city must file a governance and operations plan that really will serve as a framework for how the aggregation program will operate. And so that's what we're here to discuss and review today. And that governance and operations plan will go before council for approval, and we're expecting it to appear on the November 23rd agenda. So once that is approved, the city can then move forward with its PUCO application. So with just a little bit of that background and context, I am very happy to hand things over to Scott Belcastro with Trey Bell, the city's consultant for the aggregation program, and who has been really instrumental in helping us craft this governance and operations plan, and is going to walk us through the plan.
Hi, Aaron. Thank you for the introduction. Appreciate it. Council members, appreciate your being here this evening. I always like when you guys take an interest in what was going on. This is kind of a I want to just kind of give a precursor to this meeting this evening. Largely, the plan of operation and governance is driven by the PUCO rules, and so it will be kind of a little bit of a dry meeting. But at the end of the day, we're just going to walk through how this plan, how the aggregation will be managed here in Columbus. This plan just lays out the steps. Most of it just ties right back to the rules that we have to follow anyhow, but you do have to memorialize it in this document called the plan, government operation and governance plan, sorry. The other thing that's worth noting here is I always like to put a disclaimer on this. It's just simply that we are putting the plan together, and it is to be not detailed about what exactly the rate is and the term and et cetera. it is more of a general document in how, and we really don't want to be touching this document a ton, because it does require more meetings, more disclosures, etc. So, but it's good information if you're someone out there and just wants to understand what happens if X, and then what do I do for, to get to the next, as it relates to you specifically. Aaron, if we can go to the next slide, please. Just so you guys know, as Aaron mentioned, in November of 2020, we got the voters' approval. We're just this just really kind of talks a little bit more about the 100% clean energy program by 2022. It is a commitment to all locally sourced energy, and when we say locally, we really mean the state of Ohio, which is kind of a big deal. And AEP has really done a good job of pursuing and putting that together and sourcing Ohio renewable energy. The aggregation program, just so you guys know, it covers the power supply or generation portion of your electric bill. For those of you out there, if you happen to have an electric bill handy, you will see electric generation, transmission, distribution, customer charges on your bill. This part that the City of Columbus is pursuing just covers and replaces the generation portion on your bill. The portion that came from AEP Ohio previously will disappear once this new program takes place. And just as a note, it does allow for all residential and commercial, small commercial, I should say, customers to participate in this program. Next slide, please. So prior to the enrollment, things don't just happen automatically or instantaneously. Eligible residents, including small businesses, will receive a notice detailing the rates, terms, and conditions. This is called an opt-out letter, and that letter you will be receiving this much more closely to the rollout of your program. This really gives you an opportunity to look over all of the terms, like the rate, how long is the program, are there any termination fees? It gives you an opportunity to read the terms and conditions letter. You will have 21 days to opt out or decline to participate if you chose to do so. And as you will learn later, this is you will be able to do that with no additional fees charged. Those opting out of the program will remain with AEP Ohio's standard service offer for generation service. I think it's worth noting at this point that in Ohio, we've been deregulated for some time. As a result, nobody's getting electric straight from AEP Ohio any longer. All the electric is being served through alternative suppliers, and that rate is being established by a series of auctions that take place. So if you didn't know that, I always hear people say, we're still gonna get it from AEP Ohio because they're our utility. They're really not in the business, because of deregulation of Ohio, of producing power anymore. Those participants who leave the program and wish to return, those who affirmatively choose to participate in the aggregation program, and those who move into the city after the initial opt-out period are able to enroll in the aggregation program on an opt-in basis at the same price, terms, and conditions. And that's kind of important, because going on down the road, you won't be opting in at some different rate. You'll be opting in at the same rate that's in effect at the time of the aggregation. Next slide, please. The city is utilizing a consultant. In this case, it's Trey Bell. I am the owner of Trey Bell, Scott Bell Castro, and we are just providing the necessary expertise to represent the city's interests in legislative and regulatory matters, and to assist the city in implementing and managing the aggregation program. Trey Bell has been in business since 9 of 2010. We've hit our 10-year anniversary, and we've got over 100 different communities now that we manage for various, whether it be villages, cities, or townships, or city, as I may have already said, cities throughout Ohio in every single area. The supplier's electric supply charges will include an administrative fee and grant fees embedded in the electric rate. What does that mean? It means that Traybell is paid very similar to an insurance, agent. In fact, almost identically. We don't get paid by the city, but we do get paid by the supplier that the city chooses to move forward with. We are indifferent to any supplier. We get paid no matter which supplier that actually wins to serve the community, and they're the ones who pay us, just like an insurance company would pay the insurance agent. So the other thing worth noting is that the grant fees will also get paid through this program from the supplier straight to the city. These funds are used to fund the implementation and administration of the city's aggregation program. And I think as far as people are curious, support sustainability efforts, energy efficiency, and other policy priorities of the city that benefit the Columbus community. And the city has been very busy trying to find ways to improve and make this program the absolute best to the residents, and coming up with ways to serve different needs of the city of Columbus. Next slide, please. The city and the consultant will select and negotiate with a potential CREST provider who provides competitive, reliable, renewable electric and other electric-related services on behalf of the city's eligible consumers and aggregation program participants. This statement, just please everybody frame what we're saying here, because it is in this document. That's all why we're saying this. This process where we're selecting a supplier and all that has already been made. But for the purposes of being in this document, that's why this statement is being made. The CREST provider's supply contract will run for a fixed term, 5 to 15 years, and contain all pricing, charges, switching fees, etc., in a clean and understandable terms. Those terms, as we've already mentioned, will be sent to you through an opt-out letter, and so you'll be the supplier will be putting that letter together in collaboratively with the city. Next slide, please. All the electric supply charges will be fully and prominently disclosed in consumer enrollment materials, the opt-out notice, and will be subject to the approval by the city. And all they're saying is the opt-out letter, in this case, since the supplier happens to be AEP Energy, AEP Energy will be putting together this letter. The city will have the option to review it, make any changes that they deem appropriate, and it should be written in a very easy to read way that any consumer that picks up that document can understand what the rate is, the term, are there any fees, and how it got to be. And the other most important thing, how do you contact the supplier to get in or out of the program? Next slide, please. This question comes up quite a bit from residents, but it's stated here in this document. Participants will continue to be billed by AEP Ohio's services and delivery charges by AEP Ohio in one statement. So that is part of the plan of operation governance. It's just stating that there'll be one bill, and that's pretty typical of most of anybody who's ever changed suppliers. AEP Ohio, the utility, will bill you, and the charges from the alternative supplier will show up on that bill. You do not need to pay two people. You're paying only AEP Ohio, the utility, just as you've always done. Nothing's different. The utility will be in charge of paying the supplier, so you don't have to worry about that. The city will offer its aggregation program to all eligible residential, non-commercial customers in any and all customer classifications and in all rate categories for which a CREST provider can offer competitive renewable electric service. Really, again, just a lot of regulatory wording here, but all we're really saying is all the different classifications that are set by the PUCO, you will be able to participate in this program. Next slide, please. The city and the consultant will request the electric distribution utility to provide current customer information for all customers within the city boundaries. And we're talking about the incorporated area of the city. The examples of such information would be the name, service address, customer load data, and whether or not the customer has a contract with a CREST provider. And we use that information to create the end list that we send the opt-out letters to. So we will request to AEP Ohio, the utility, all the names that are eligible for the program. We will, so to speak, what we in industry call scrubbing the list. AEP will end up sending this opt-out letter to all those who are eligible. If you are a PIP customer, or if you have your own contract prior to the start of this program, you are what we call ineligible. It does not mean that you can't join at a later date, but what it does mean at the outset, we will only be eligible if you are using the default rate of AEP Ohio. I think it's worth noting, again, that you will be able to join at a later date if you've already got your own contract. We do not take you out of an pre-existing contract that you've made a choice about. Next slide, please. We've already stated this a couple times, but I think it's worth repeating. All eligible customers will be notified in writing of the rates, charges, and other terms and conditions of participation in the aggregation program. And they will automatically be enrolled in the aggregation program unless they opt out or decline participation. The question comes up a lot, why are we having to opt out rather than opt in? If we did an opt-in program, you typically, if you go in the suppliers, we go out to bid, or we ask the suppliers, hey, can you give us the best, absolute best rate that you can? And they'll say to me, Scott, how many people are going to opt in? I have no idea. Well, then they'll tell me, well, I have no idea what my best rate is. But because we're using the opt-out program, we know there's a percentage of the City of Columbus residents and businesses are going to use the program, and therefore they're able to get better pricing by buying in bulk, which is again sort of the purpose of governmental community aggregation here. You will be able to opt out at no cost. Okay, so just so you guys know that. You will also be able to, outside the 21 days, to opt out at any time. And this is all, again, known and why it's in the plan of operation and governance. Consumers opting out of the program will remain on the applicable distribution standard service offer. Again, all they're saying is if you decide not to join the aggregation of the city has presented, then you'll just default back to AEP Ohio's default rate. Again, it's not their rate, it's the rate that's been established through auctions. Next slide, please. How do you get out of the program? There are a number of ways that you can do that. By returning a postcard or a slip at the bottom of the opt-out letter. The easiest way is to call the supplier by calling a toll-free number or by any other means. And I wrote in here, likely online, because we're getting to the point that we can now do that. So you'll be able to have multiple ways to do that, or form provided in the opt-out letter. After the initial 21 days period is elapsed, all eligible customers who have not notified the city or the CREST provider of their desire to opt out of the aggregation program will be enrolled automatically by the CREST provider at the earliest date practical. No affirmative steps will be required of the consumers in order to be included in the aggregation as participants. Typically, after the opt-out letter, you've got 21 days to opt out. If you don't opt out, you'll be put on a list submitted to the utility, and that utility list ultimately is the one that determines who's going to be switched. And as you'll learn here in a minute, the utility will give you another 7 days to opt out again. So there's lots of protections built into these programs for you. Next slide. Pursuant to Ohio law and PUCO rules, consumers currently ineligible to participate in the aggregation program include those customer accounts that are located outside the city's boundaries, customers who are already in a contract, customers in a special rate contract with an electric distribution utility, percentage of income payment plan, PIP customers, and consumers whose accounts are not current with their present utility. The separate aggregation of PIP customers falls under the direction of the state of Ohio. PIP customers are already receiving special treatment as they're paying, as the name is pretty obvious, percentage of their income. So said a different way, to be eligible, you're currently receiving electric from the utility's default rate, and you're not a PIP customer, and you're not a customer, a large industrial customer. Next slide, please. Consumers enrolled in the aggregation program by the CREST provider will receive a letter from their electric distribution utility notifying them of their enrollment. So you're going to get a letter from the utility notifying you of your enrollment. It always, it's inevitable that it always happens. We get lots and lots of calls here, both at the supplier and Traybell. Hey, I got this letter that we were switched. Yes, that's correct. We sent the opt-out letter. The 21 days went by. They're just confirming that you have received, that you're going to be switched into the aggregation program. Consumers, remember we also spoke about once the list has been submitted to the utility will send out another letter. It's usually a postcard, and I do believe now they're actually doing it via email, that you've been switched into a program, an aggregation program. And they will have 7 days, you the consumer will have 7 days to notify the utility of any objection to your enrollment. Again, if you're going to be in the program, don't get confused by this letter. It's okay that it's coming to you. So if you do have a question, call the supplier or call Traybell. We'd be glad to help you understand what you've received. The applicable electric distribution utility will notify the CREST provider of consumer objections or any reason that a consumer was not enrolled in the aggregation program, and the CREST provider will maintain a list of customers who have opted out under the aggregation program rules. And I apologize, we're kind of bouncing back and forth between CREST provider, which is essentially a supplier. The CREST provider, supplier, will report to the city and its consultant the status of the aggregation program enrollment on a monthly basis. So every month they're going to report back to us how many people specifically have been paid their bill on time and how many people will be enrolled in the program. So we'll be able to keep a good record of the participation levels. Next slide, please. In addition to the initial opt-out period, you'll be given every 3 years the opportunity to opt out without paying an early termination fee or penalty as required by the PUCO rules. As I wrote in here, this is opposed to by contractual design, any customer can leave at any time due to no early termination fee. So what am I really saying? The PUCO regulatory rules require an opt-out letter to be sent every 3 years for you to consider whether you're going to stay in or leave. But I just want you to know, because the program contractually, which is different than the PUCO rules, will require no early termination fee, you can leave at any time, regardless of the every 3 years. Okay? Any consumer who opts out of the aggregation program during the initial opt-out period or subsequent every 3-year opt-out periods will be returned to their utility standard service offer. So if we're 5 years into the program and you decide to opt out of the program, you will just simply be placed back to AEP Ohio's, the utility standard service offer rate that you would have received regardless. Next slide, please. Participants who leave the aggregation program and wish to return. Consumers who affirmatively choose to participate in the aggregation program, and consumers who move into the city after the initial opt-out period will be afforded the opportunity to enroll in the aggregation program on an opt-in basis at the same terms, price, and conditions that are in effect at that time. So if you leave the aggregation program and wish to return, you can join. Consumers who affirmatively decide to opt into the program later on can join. Consumers who move into the city after the initial opt-out period, you will also be afforded the opportunity to enroll in the aggregation program. And in fact, we will be sending out letters periodically throughout the year, notifying new accounts that you can enroll in the program. So this is a good thing because you'll be given that opportunity. You'll get to see the terms and conditions and make a good decision about your personal energy spend in your home or business. In the event that a consumer is not initially included in the aggregation program and the consumer chooses to participate in the aggregation program after it's begun, that consumer may participate in the aggregation program by executing a contract to enroll in the established aggregation program with the selected press provider, delineating the rates, terms and conditions prior to being placed into the aggregation program. So you will be given, again, opt-out letters periodically throughout the year, throughout the term of the program. Will be sent letters if you want to. Now, again, super important, worth noting, if you've opted out of the program initially, and you want to be considered for the next program or rate term, you will receive another opt-out letter. You will receive another opt-out letter because the rates will change throughout, I believe it's going to be potentially every year. In any case, every time that annual, the new program starts, the new rate takes effect, you will be given the opportunity to opt out. You may contact the city, the consultant, to obtain current enrollment information and the applicable contract to opt into the established aggregation program. We have established Clean Energy Columbus. It's a website specific for this program, and I believe information will be available to you on the website. Next slide, please. So we've kind of already covered this. Participants who leave the aggregation program wish to return. If you relocate and retain the same electric utility account number, will be allowed to continue the aggregation program at their new location under the same terms and conditions as their former location, provided that the electric utility rate classification is the same at both locations. So if you're a residential account and you move across town, but you're still in the city limits, you'll retain, you'll still be able to continue. You don't have to redo that. If you're a small business, I'm going to use a pizza shop as an example, and you close one location, move across, across town, and you reestablish another account under the same classification, as a small business commercial account, you'll be able to continue with the aggregation at the same rates and terms. A CREST provider will comply with all local, state, and federal rules and regulations regarding discontinuing service to aggregation participants. Another thing that we've required through this plan of operation and governance is just stating that net metering participants shall be able to participate in the aggregation program, and the CREST provider will allow net metering of those accounts if the participant has signed an interconnection agreement with the applicable utility and subject to all Ohio rules and regulations. It was important to the city of Columbus that we're obviously pursuing clean energy, and that net metering be available. So it has made it into the plan of operation and governance. Next slide, please. Thank you. The city plans to utilize the applicable electric distribution utilities consolidated billing service, in which each participant account receives one bill itemizing the CREST provider supply charges and electric distribution utilities delivery and other PUCO approved charges. And a lot, it's kind of wordy, but at the end of the day, all it's saying is you're going to be receiving one bill from the utility, that being AEP Ohio, and on that bill are all the charges for the utility and the alternative supplier. Next slide, please. Questions and concerns. This document will be available and on hand if you had a question. You don't need to call and get this document. You simply could call AEP or Trey Bell, but if you didn't know who to call, this will be an available. Who do you call? Power outage or interruption, you continue to call AEP Ohio. Connect or disconnect service, AEP Ohio. Meter reading and billing, AEP Ohio, the utility. Enrollment in or opting out of an aggregation program. I would always start with AEP Energy, the supplier, but if you have questions or are not sure about what you're doing, you're welcome to call Trey Bell. We do have customer service individuals. Our office always has someone staffed here ready to call, as does AEP Energy, to guide you through the process. Questions about the aggregation program or just general concerns. Trey Bell has, as I've already mentioned, our entire office is prepared to take your call, guide you in the right direction. We'll try to get you wherever you need to go. And if we need to, we'll get on a three-way call with the supplier or the utility and help you get through these questions if need be. The city of Columbus, being the governmental aggregator, has a phone number there available, and you're welcome to call that number to get help anytime you need it. Any unresolved disputes or you're angry, you're always welcome to call the PUCO, and their phone numbers are right there at your disposal. Next slide, please. If for any reason a CREST provider fails to provide uninterrupted service, the city and its consultant will attempt to acquire an alternative power supply. If this attempt fails, participants will default to the applicable electric distribution utility standard service offer. In no case will participants be without power as a result of the CREST provider's failure to provide the supply of generation. No matter what happens, we just want you to understand there will be power coming to your home. If something were to happen where a supplier couldn't get it to you, I just want you to know it will get there as a default through the utility. And again, if there's any issue, you're going to be defaulting to the standard service offer, which is what you were receiving at the beginning anyhow. You're never made any worse off, just remember that. Next slide, please. CREST provider contracts shall also contain non-discrimination provisions to ensure the equitable treatment of all customer classes. Low-income consumers shall remain subject to all provisions of the Ohio law and PUCO rules and regulations, as they may amend from time to time regarding their rights to participate in the aggregation program. Next slide, please. Aggregation program participants are subject to the same standards and responsibilities as other electric consumers, including payment of billings. So what we're really saying is if you're always required to pay AEP Ohio on time, then you're required through this program to pay AEP Ohio on time as well. Nothing changes here. There's no difference in how your program will be, or your electric service will be managed. Access to metering and other equipment necessary to carry out utility operations. And really what they're saying is, if you've got a meter, which everyone does on their home or on your business, you'll still have to have that meter on your home so that the utility can read it and determine how much electric you used every month. Typically, businesses interval metering is required for every SDI, service delivery identifier, whose maximum monthly billing demand for the most recent 12 months period is 200 kW or greater. The cost of any interval metering facilities installed by AEP Ohio to comply with this requirement shall be paid for by the customer. The customer must provide written approval for the meter installation when the CRUS provider is to be billed. This, for those out there who are scared to death of what I just read, it's required already. If you're a business and your in any recent 12-month period is greater than 200 kW, this is kW, kilowatts, not kilowatts per hour. I know that you're going to use a lot more than that kilowatts per hour, but the demand charge, kW, on your bill, and it is laid out on your bill, and you can see that, the utility will require you to put an interval meter on your business meter. This is not something that is coming as a result of the aggregation program. It is something that is required through the PUCO tariffs, okay? So I just don't want you to get panicked when you see that. It already exists. Next slide, please. In the event the aggregation program terminates, each participant will receive written notification of the termination of at least 60 days prior to such program termination, and will have the option to return to the applicable utility standard service offer or select another approved CREST provider. Just letting you know, if in the event that this program did come to an end, it's just in the plan of operation and governance that 60 days prior to such termination, you will be we're notifying you that you're going to have to go back to the utility's standard rate, or you're always welcome to shop for a new supplier on your own. And always a good idea to check the Apples to Apples website that's been provided to check out rates and make your own decision about what your spend might look like. Erin?
Great. Thank you so much, Scott, for going over all of that wonderful information that is contained within our governance and operations plan for the planned aggregation program. Certainly if we were in normal times and we're able to gather in council chambers or, another location in the community, we would actually have printed versions of this document for folks to review, to read, but we do have it available. I just want to make sure that that's clear for folks that, the council offices have access to that. We can provide that to folks if you would like a copy. It's going to be part of the legislation that will be going in front of council. And we do intend as well to add the document to our cleanenergycolumbus.org website that Scott had mentioned. And so before I kind of hand things over to the council members, I did just want to revisit and share the timeline and next steps just to provide some more context for folks as to how this plan fits into our overall implementation and kind of where we are in the implementation of our clean energy aggregation program. So if we just kind of bring our attention to the dark blue banner, looking at Q4 of 2020, we're certainly in that November timeframe. We have the approval of voters again, which is so great. We're super excited about. We're in that process right now of holding the 2 public hearings and really working on our PUCO application to become a certified aggregator. Then looking forward to December, we are continuing to have MSA negotiations or that supply contract negotiations with AEP Energy. We also are going to be holding an aggregation advisory group meeting in December. So this is a group, I mentioned this group a little bit earlier, but has been met in September and October and are going to continue to meet until we actually launch the aggregation program. So we'll have a meeting coming up in December. Members of the public are welcome and encouraged to join. We definitely encourage that and want to hear from folks as we're kind of moving through this process together. So that kind of brings us to the end of 2020. And then just looking ahead to 2021, early in the year, we expect to be really approving that master supply agreement. And so that will include a council process, and certainly there will be public hearings as a part of approving that contract. So that's when we want to be very transparent with folks in the community about, just like Scott was saying, what the rate is going to be, what the terms are going to be, and just kind of providing, once again, more information to the public about the program. We'll be meeting again with the advisory group, then kind of moving into spring, we're just looking at getting the program stood up, continuing those advisory group meetings. May is when we expect to see those opt-out letters going out, and then June is when we expect the aggregation program to start. And so that is pretty much, I think, all we had for tonight, but just thank you again to everyone for the time. If you do want more information on aggregation, again, we have the cleanenergycolumbus.org website. If you're looking for information on the advisory group or you think you want to maybe attend a meeting, you can just go to columbus.gov/sustainable/aggregation. So that's if you go to our Sustainable Columbus website, there are links there to learn more about aggregation and the advisory group. And with that, I will hand things back over to Councilmember Dorans.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Scott, for that very thorough presentation. I appreciate it. Wanted to offer Councilmember Remy the first opportunity to ask any questions of any of our guests here this evening.
So questions this evening. Very thorough, Scott. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Remy. So, Aaron, I had a question for you. So, obviously, there are things that are not included in the governance plan. So, I think a lot of the things that we've talked about around that advisory group, whether it's the community grant program or local workforce requirements for project developments, for renewable energy project developments. Just want to sort of flag for folks sort of to make sure that people understand about what we're talking about here today versus some of the other discussions around sort of aggregation in general. So Aaron, I want to give you just a moment or two if you could sort of talk about, what, if you want to give us the very overview of what the governance plan means towards the overall aggregation program itself, and then some of these other topics which you alluded to with the advisory group, and how those additional commitments, whether it's the grants program or whether it's local labor requirements, where can the public expect to see those kinds of things be discussed or formalized, whether it's legislation before council or sort of agreements between the city, Traybell, or AEP?
Yeah, thank you. That is a really great question, and appreciate trying to make some of that a little bit clearer for folks. To your point, I think Scott and Traybell were really helpful in us understanding that this document is really meant to be a framework for how the program will operate. It is not, and Scott, I think, said this at the beginning of his presentation, it's not necessarily going to get into the details of every single component of the program. So to your point, I think some of those details are really more I think what you were speaking to, which is some of the workforce development goals, the community grant funding, and how that funding is going to be kind of spent or what it will be put toward. Those are definitely components where we're looking for public feedback and input. That's where we might expect to see some of that coming into play with the supply agreement with the energy supplier, in terms of, potential workforce development goals. And then again, that community grant funding and kind of how that is going to be used. At this point, that's funding that's going to come back to the city. And if the program is not actually beginning until June of 2021, I believe, and Scott or Frank can correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, but that would be coming back to the city then on a monthly basis, again, being paid on a kilowatt hour basis. So, and I don't know if Scott has anything to add to that. I feel like he does a great job of explaining, what the purpose of the governance and operations plan is. So,
yeah, Aaron, you got it absolutely correct. It is on a monthly basis, and it's based on how much kWh was used and number of participants.
Great. Thank you both for that. Because I know, as we've talked a lot about this, I know all of us were at a lot of civic association, area commission meetings, and different groups to sort of talk about where these different things fit in the different buckets as far as aggregation goes. And this is one of the things that's very easy to sort of have everything confused to be together when, while it's all under the same umbrella, there's certain things that we have to do, from a public utilities commission standpoint, from a supply agreement standpoint, just trying to make sure that folks understand sort of, what we're talking about and when. So I appreciate both of you sort of clarifying that. One thing I just wanted to ask you, Scott, I think you mentioned this in your presentation, for folks. So if someone, moves into the city after the aggregation program happens, so they're not a City of Columbus resident, but they move into the city, what happens to them at that point when they, call up their utility and say, hey, I need to, start service? Will they be in the aggregation pool at that point, or will they need to take an additional step in order to be included in the program?
A very good question, and thank you. So if you're moving in from out of town into the city program, then you would call AEP Ohio, the utility, to establish service. So once you've established service, they'll issue you a customer number. And then what will end up happening is, if you somehow find out about the aggregation and want to join it, you'll simply need to call AEP Energy and they'll get you right into the program. If you would like to, or we mentioned earlier too, another way to get into the program is that every year, throughout the year, there's going to be what we call refreshes. And those are mailings to new account numbers that have been established, and you'll receive an opt-out letter giving you the terms and conditions. You'll receive 21 days to review it, just as you always do, and you'll be able to decide if you want to join it. So there are those two ways. First thing is establish an account through your local utility. If you find out about the program and want to join before those refreshes come through, then you call AEP Energy, in this case, the supplier. You can call Trey Bell, and we're just going to point you right towards AEP Energy or a website where we can get you enrolled automatically. Either way, that's how you'll be getting into the program at a later date.
Thanks, Scott. And my last question for tonight, and I think you have answered it probably 3 different times, but this is something that I heard, I think, with every single group I spoke with this fall about community choice aggregation. And I just wanted you to repeat it and underline it just to make sure that folks understand it. There are no additional fees to opt in, opt out, participate in the program in any way. Is that correct, Scott? Other than your typical energy bill that you would pay anyways.
Yep, no fees at all. No fees to get in, no fees to get out.
Great. Thanks,
and
Scott.
The good thing is you're protected. Leave it anytime you wish.
Appreciate that. So as I mentioned earlier, my office didn't receive any speaker slips for today's hearing. I know we have a number of folks that are planning on joining us on Thursday. If folks would like to participate in that hearing, if they have got questions for council, the mayor's office, Trey Bell, or AEP, and certainly, as we sort of talked about those different buckets of things, these hearings are focused on the governance plan for aggregation. However, these do give us an opportunity, as Aaron mentioned earlier, to provide additional feedback as these conversations continue around the supply agreement and sort of internally as we sort of structure this program at the city. So we would invite folks, certainly to provide feedback on the governance documents itself, but also if they've got questions for the mayor's office, AEP, council about how these other parts of the program are going to be structured, would certainly invite them to join us on Thursday. And whether it's an answer from us or the mayor's office or Trey Bell or AEP, want to make sure that we have that. If folks want to testify at that hearing, they can email my legislative aide, Kevin McCain, at kbmccain@columbus.gov. We'll provide you with the links to participate in the program. Or if you'd like to provide written testimony and have questions for any of the parties, we'll be happy to make sure those questions are asked at the hearing if you'd like to participate in that way. That hearing will be held this Thursday at 4 p.m., again, virtually. With that, I would certainly invite my colleague, Councilmember Remy, if he has any closing remarks.
Thank you again, Councilmember Dorans, for your leadership. Appreciate everybody's presentation today. This is very informative. Certainly look forward to our next hearing, and then certainly towards as we move forward in finding the right supplier, or I'm sorry, working on the master service agreement, and then into the hearings in January, February. So looks like everything's in the right time frame. We're going to make sure we hit those deadlines and make sure that this thing gets rolling in June. It's certainly something that obviously the electorate wants, and the residents of Columbus are going to be great beneficiaries. And excited the impact that it's going to make on our aggregation goals, on our sustainability goals here in the city of Columbus. So thank you once again, and look forward to our next hearing.
Thank you, Chair Remy. Appreciate that. And I think I've said this a number of times throughout this process. It's very rare that we're able to consider a piece of public policy that's good for the environment, it's good for jobs, and it's good for the ratepayers. So we have a very unique opportunity in front of us, and very excited that we all have an opportunity now that the voters have weighed in after November to be able to move this forward. So again, Councilmember Remy, appreciate you being a big part of moving this through council, and certainly want to thank everyone for their work on this. So at this point, I just want to again extend my thanks for the folks that joined us tonight virtually. Certainly Aaron Beck from the mayor's office, Scott Belcastro from Trey Bell, Frank Wilson from AEP being here with us tonight. Also want to thank Kevin McCain from my team, Hannah Miller from my team as well. Certainly Councilmember Remy's team, Jeff Carter and Lucy Frank, the CTV crew, and especially the council clerk staff, Angie Burks and Mark Carter, for making sure that this virtual hearing can actually work. We're certainly forever in their debt for making sure that during these COVID times, we're able to continue to hold these hearings and make sure the public is informed about these important issues that are going to have an impact on folks' lives in our community for decades to come. If folks are looking for more information about aggregation, they're welcome to check out the website cleanenergycolumbus.org. As I think both Aaron and Scott mentioned, various parts of his presentation are there currently. And certainly if folks are interested in getting the full slide deck or governance plan as it exists, you're welcome to email me at radorans@columbus.gov. So with that, again, thank you to everyone who participated tonight. And at this point, I will gavel the hearing now, and everyone have a good evening. Take care, everyone.